Her name is Cynthia Sanders, a black woman who understood a fundamental truth. Silence is not weakness. It's strategy. She is not bitter. She did not complain. She did not cause scenes. When her boss called her the wrong name, she would just correct him quietly. Every morning she sat outside Randall Chase's corner office at 7:45 a.m. Sharp 15 minutes before he arrived, her desk immaculate, her posture impeccable, her burgundy lipstick perfectly applied. When people tried to dismiss her, she would pause for a moment, then continue her work like she was protecting something valuable inside. Most people at Chase Industries did not even see Cynthia as a full person. They only saw her as a secretary. But if you watched her closely, you would notice something unusual about her. Her desk was always organized. Her nails were always done. Even when her clothes were simple, she still looked polished. She had perfect posture when she sat, and when she walked through the office, she did not rush like someone who was afraid. Her voice was soft, but it was not weak. She was the kind of person who noticed everything. The way her boss' voice changed when speaking to white colleagues versus her, the way his eyes slid past her as if she were furniture, the way he took credit for her ideas in meetings she wasn't invited to attend. But it was not weakness. The problem was this: Cynthia worked for a man who enjoyed making people feel small. His name was Randall Chase. The restaurant was the kind of place where a salad cost $45 and came with 3 leaves of arugula, arranged like modern art. Randall Chase sat at his usual corner table at Cipriani, the Tuesday lunch crowd buzzing around him like expensive background noise. His inner circle had gathered the way they always did on the first Tuesday of every month. Trevor, the hedge fund manager with silver temples and a divorce lawyer on retainer. Blake, whose family had owned half of the Upper East Side since before it was fashionable. And Simone, the socialite, influencer who documented her life in filtered squares and called it a career. Randall swirled his second martini and leaned back in his chair. He was in a good mood. The quarterly earnings had exceeded projections. His lawyers had crushed another lawsuit, and his mistress had finally stopped asking about leaving his wife. Trevor stabbed at his Dover sole and grinned. "So Randy, who's coming to your circus this year?" "Same boring faces." Randall laughed, the sound sharp and entitled. "God, I hope not. I'm tired of the Hendersons complaining about their yacht tax. And Patricia Worthington talking about her charity work like she's Mother Teresa instead of a bored housewife with too much money." Blake poured himself more wine, the bottle probably worth more than most people's monthly rent. "You need fresh blood, someone interesting, or someone entertaining," Simone added, scrolling through her phone with manicured nails that clicked against the screen. That was when the idea hit him. Randall's eyes lit up with the particular gleam of someone who had just thought of something cruel and mistaken it for cleverness. "You know what would be hilarious? I should invite Cindy." The table went quiet for exactly 2 seconds. Then Trevor's eyebrows shot up. "Your secretary? The black girl?" Simone looked up from her phone, suddenly interested. Randall was already chuckling, pleased with himself. It would be comedy gold. "Can you imagine? Cindy trying to fit in with our crowd? She probably thinks Valentino is a rapper." Blake nearly spit out his wine, recovering with a laugh that was more of a bark. "That's savage, man. Absolutely savage, right?" Randall was warming to the idea now. His voice animated in the way it only got when he was talking about himself or humiliating someone else. "She'll show up in something tragic from Macy's. Maybe one of those Forever 21 dresses that doesn't quite fit right. And everyone will be too polite to say anything, but we'll all be thinking it." Trevor leaned forward, grinning like a shark that had smelled blood. "What if she doesn't come?" "Oh, she'll come," Randall said with absolute confidence. "People like Cindy don't turn down invitations to places like the Plaza. It's probably the fanciest thing that'll ever happen to her. She'll tell her family about it for years." Simone tilted her head, her expression calculating. "You're actually doing this, why not?" Randall shrugged, finishing his martini. "We'll have a good laugh and she'll realize where she stands. It's almost educational when you think about it. A little reminder about social hierarchy. Character building." Blake raised his glass. "To Randall Chase, patron saint of life lessons." They all laughed. The sound carried across the restaurant, turning a few heads. But nobody stopped them. Nobody ever stopped people like them. By the time Randall returned to Chase Industries at 3 o'clock, he was still riding the high of his own joke. He breezed through the lobby, past the security guards who straightened at his approach. into the private elevator that required a key card. The 47th floor was quiet in that expensive way, all marble and glass and the hushed sound of money being made. Cynthia was at her desk outside his office, exactly where she always was. Her fingers moved across her keyboard with practiced precision. Her desk was immaculate as usual. A small succulent sat in one corner, the only personal item she allowed herself. She did not look up when he approached. Randall pulled the cream-colored invitation from his jacket pocket. He had grabbed one from the stack his event planner had delivered that morning. He tossed it onto her desk, where it landed next to her keyboard with a soft flutter. This Saturday, the Plaza, black tie. You're invited. Cynthia's fingers paused. She looked at the invitation, then up at him. Her expression was completely neutral. To your gala? Don't get too excited, Randall said, already turning toward his office door. Let's call it staff appreciation. You've been here 3 years. Might as well see how the other half lives. He expected something. A gasp maybe, wide eyes, stammering gratitude. The kind of reaction that would confirm everything he believed about her, about himself, about the natural order of things. Instead, Cynthia picked up the invitation with steady hands. She examined it for exactly 3 seconds. Then she met his eyes and her voice was calm as still water. How generous. I'll be there. The moment stretched out longer than Randall intended. There was something in her face he could not quite read. Not excitement, not fear, just a kind of quiet certainty that made him feel like he had missed something important. He waited for her to say more, to ask questions, to reveal the nervousness he knew must be hiding underneath that composed surface. But Cynthia simply set the invitation down in the corner of her desk, aligned perfectly with the edge, and returned to her keyboard. Her fingers resumed their steady rhythm. She had dismissed him without moving, without speaking, without changing her expression at all. Randall felt a flicker of something uncomfortable in his chest. Irritation, maybe, or something closer to unease. He cleared his throat. Right. Well, try not to overthink the dress code. Just do your best. She did not respond. She was already absorbed in her work again, as if he had already left. Randall walked into his office and closed the door harder than necessary. He sat at his desk and pulled out his phone, still feeling oddly unsettled. He opened the group chat with Trevor, Blake, and Simone. She accepted, he typed. This is going to be epic. The responses came immediately. Take photos. I want to see this disaster. Trevor, you're terrible. I love it. Simone with 3 laughing emojis. Can't wait for Saturday, Blake added. Randall stared at their messages and felt his confidence returning. Of course it would be hilarious. Of course she would be out of her depth. That moment of calm in her face was probably just shock. She was probably already panicking, wondering what she had gotten herself into. He looked through his office window at her desk. She was on the phone now, taking notes, her posture perfect as always. As he watched, she reached for her coffee cup and took a sip without breaking her concentration. Randall turned back to his computer and smiled. Saturday was going to be very entertaining. What he did not see was the way Cynthia's hand trembled, slightly as she set down her coffee cup, or the way she touched the invitation one more time when she thought no one was watching, or the way her jaw tightened for just a moment before her face went smooth again. He did not see any of it. He never did. The subway car rattled through the tunnel beneath Manhattan, the fluorescent lights flickering against the tired faces of people heading home. Cynthia stood near the doors, one hand on the pole, her work bag pressed against her hip. She had learned years ago how to make herself small in crowded spaces, how to occupy just enough room and no more. Randall probably thought she took the bus. He had never asked. The train screeched to a stop at 125th Street. Cynthia stepped onto the platform and climbed the stairs. Into the cooling evening air. Harlem smelled like frying plantains, and car exhaust and the particular sweetness of a summer day turning into night. She walked 3 blocks to the bodega on the corner, the same one she had been stopping at for 2 years. The bell chimed as she pushed open the door. Mr. Hernandez looked up from behind the counter and his weathered face broke into a smile. Cynthia, how's your mother? She's good, Mr. Hernandez, breathing easier this week. Thank God, he said, crossing himself quickly. You tell Diane I'm still praying for her, and you take this. He grabbed a bottle of orange juice from the cooler and waved away her money. You look tired, mija. You need vitamins. Cynthia felt something loosen in her chest. This was what Randall would never understand. that she was not invisible everywhere, that some people knew her name and said it correctly, that some places felt like home. "Thank you," she said softly, accepting the juice. "You're a good daughter." Mr. Hernandez called after her as she left. "Your mama is blessed." The apartment building was 6 stories of red brick and fire escapes, the kind of place that had been nice once and was still trying. Cynthia climbed to the 4th floor, her keys already in her hand. She unlocked the 2 deadbolts and stepped inside. Her mother sat in the recliner by the window, oxygen tube in her nose, a crossword puzzle in her lap. Diane Sanders was 63 and looked older, but her eyes were still sharp and full of love. She looked up when Cynthia entered and her expression shifted, immediately to concern. "Baby, you look tired." Cynthia set down her bag and bent to kiss her mother's forehead. "I'm fine, Mama, don't find me." Diane reached up and touched her daughter's face. "I can see it in your eyes. That man worked you hard today. He works me hard every day. You're working for a man who doesn't see you." Cynthia moved to the small kitchen and poured herself a glass of water. She drank it slowly, looking out the window at the street below. A group of kids played double dutch on the sidewalk, their laughter floating up through the open window. "He sees me, he just doesn't like what he sees." "Then make him look again." Cynthia turned, surprised. Her mother was watching her with an expression she remembered from childhood, the look that said Diane Sanders had not raised her daughter to be anyone's doormat. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you've been hiding long enough. I know why you took that job. You did it for me and your father, God rest him. You did it because you're loyal and good and you put your family first. But baby, your father is gone, and I'm still here fighting. You don't have to keep making yourself small for people who wouldn't cross the street to help you." Cynthia felt her throat tighten. She walked to her bedroom, her mother's words following her like a dare. She stood in front of her closet for a long moment before reaching up to the top shelf. Her fingers found the garment bag covered in dust, pushed far back where she had tried to forget about it. She pulled it down and laid it across her bed. The zipper made a soft sound as she opened it. The champagne silk caught the evening light coming through the window, glowing like liquid gold. The gown had a plunging neckline and a slit that went nearly to the hip. It was custom made by a designer who had owed her a favor back when favors from designers meant something. Cynthia touched the fabric and suddenly she was somewhere else. She was 24 and in a corner office at Sanders & Associates, her father's firm, closing a deal that would make the business $250,000. She was 25 at a gala at the Met, wearing this exact dress, laughing on the arm of Marcus Webb, the attorney everyone said was going places. She was 26, watching her father's business collapse. After a client lawsuit they could not survive. She saw the house sold, the cars repossessed, her carefully built life dismantled piece by piece like a building being torn down. She remembered her father clutching his chest in the hospital, telling her it was not her fault, telling her to go, to chase her career. And she remembered choosing to stay, to care for him until he died, to care for her mother after. She had chosen family over ambition, love over success, and she had never once regretted it. But she had mourned who she used to be. The memory released her. She was back in her small bedroom, holding a dress that still smelled faintly of expensive perfume. She undressed slowly and slipped the gown over her head. The silk whispered against her skin. She turned to the mirror on the back of her door. It fit perfectly. 3 years later, and it fit like it had been made yesterday. She stared at her reflection, and for the first time in so long she saw her. Not Randall's secretary. Not the tired daughter. Not the woman making herself small. She saw Cynthia Sanders, who had once walked through rooms like she owned them. Her phone was in her hand before she had consciously decided to call. She scrolled through her contacts to a name she had not touched in months. Janelle answered on the second ring. "Girl, I thought you'd never call." "You're really doing this?" Cynthia's voice was steady. "He thinks I'm a joke. I'm going to show him I'm the whole damn punchline." Janelle laughed, the sound bright and fierce. "Saturday morning, my place. I'm calling in every favor I have." The next 3 days moved like a dream. Janelle's salon in Brooklyn, where hands worked through, her hair with oils that smelled like she, butter and confidence. Her natural curls were transformed into an elegant updo that made her neck look longer, her cheekbones sharper. The makeup artist Janelle brought in gave her dramatic eyes and a bold red lip that turned her face into art. The seamstress made tiny adjustments to the gown, taking it in at the waist, letting out just a breath at the bust. until it clung to her curves like water. Cynthia stood in front of Janelle's full-length mirror on Saturday evening and barely recognized herself. Her grandmother's diamond earrings caught the light, the only valuable pieces of jewelry she had refused to sell, even when things got desperate. The 5-inch Louboutins made her tall and powerful. The woman in the mirror looked like she could run a company, like she already had, but as Janelle zipped up the back of the gown, doubt crept in cold and unwelcome. Cynthia's hands trembled as she reached for her clutch. She heard Randall's voice in her head, that particular tone of dismissive amusement he used when he wanted to remind her of her place. "That's why I pay you, Cindy, to think so I don't have to." Her breathing got shallow. What was she doing? What if he was right? What if she was just the help pretending to be something more? Then her mother's voice cut through the noise. "Make him look again." And her own voice, stronger than she expected, rose up from somewhere deep. "I didn't survive losing everything to be defeated by a man who inherited everything." Cynthia straightened her shoulders. She looked at herself one more time. The woman in the mirror looked back, unflinching. "Let's go," she said. The Plaza Hotel ballroom glittered like the inside of a jewelry box. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings painted with clouds and cherubs, casting fractured light across marble floors so polished they looked like still water. Champagne towers rose from tables draped in cream silk. A string quartet played Vivaldi in the corner, the music floating through conversations about hedge funds and vacation homes in the Hamptons. The guest list read like a Forbes directory: CEOs whose decisions moved markets, politicians who shaped laws, celebrities whose faces sold magazines, old money that whispered, new money that shouted, all the money that mattered in New York. Randall Chase stood near the center of it all, martini in hand, his tuxedo custom-tailored to hide the softness around his middle. Trevor and Blake flanked him like wingmen, while Simone held court nearby. Her dress probably featured on 3 Instagram accounts already. They were laughing about something. That particular laughter of people who had never worried about rent. Trevor checked his Rolex and grinned. "Where's your secretary? I need a good laugh tonight." Randall swirled his martini, looking toward the entrance. "She's probably lost, or couldn't figure out what to wear." "This is going to be..." The doors opened. The change in the room was not gradual. It was instant, like someone had cut the sound. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. A woman's laugh died in her throat. The string quartet faltered, the violinist losing her place for half a measure before recovering. Every head turned toward the entrance. Cynthia Sanders entered. She moved like water, fluid and inevitable and impossible to ignore. The champagne gown caught the light and held it, glowing like liquid gold against her dark skin. The plunging neckline framed her collarbones. The slit revealed one long leg with each step. But it was not the dress that stopped the room. It was the way she wore it. Her shoulders were back. Her chin was up. Her eyes looked straight ahead. She did not scan the room nervously. She did not search for Randall. She did not hesitate or second-guess or apologize with her body language. She walked like she had done this 1,000 times, because she had. A photographer near the entrance raised his camera on instinct. The flash went off. Then another. And another. A woman in Dior leaned toward her companion. "Who is that?" "I don't know, but she's stunning." Randall's martini glass slipped from his hand. It shattered on the marble floor, the sound sharp and final. Olives rolled across the ground. A waiter rushed over with a napkin. Trevor's voice came out strangled. "Randy, is that..." Randall's face had gone the color of old paper. "That's not possible." But it was possible. It was happening. Cynthia crossed the ballroom with the confidence of someone who owned every room she entered. She did not approach Randall. She did not acknowledge him. She moved to the bar at the far end, every eye tracking her movement. She ordered a glass of champagne from the bartender, her voice clear and cultured. She accepted the flute with a smile that could have launched ships. Then she turned and surveyed the room with the calm of someone who belonged. The conversation slowly resumed, but they had changed. Now they were about her. Marcus Wellington had been standing near the windows, half listening to a venture capitalist pitch him on cryptocurrency. When the room shifted, he looked toward the entrance and went very still. He watched Cynthia cross to the bar. He watched the way she moved, the way she held herself, the way she commanded space without demanding it. He had built a fortune on recognizing potential that others missed. This woman was not just beautiful, she was powerful. He excused himself from the cryptocurrency bore and walked toward the bar. Cynthia was taking a sip of champagne when he approached. She turned slightly aware of his presence before he spoke. "I don't think we've met. Marcus Wellington." She set down her glass and extended her hand. Her grip was firm, professional, the handshake of someone who had closed deals. "Cynthia Sanders, and we have met 7 years ago at the Columbia Business Forum. You gave a keynote on disruption theory." Marcus's eyebrows rose. He met hundreds of people at events like that. She should have been a face in a crowd. "You remember that? You said the best companies are built by people who've been underestimated." "I've never forgotten it." There was something in her voice, a weight that suggested those words had meant more than intellectual interest. Marcus felt his curiosity sharpen into genuine interest. "That's quite a memory. Are you in tech?" "Not currently, but I've always been interested in the intersection of innovation and implementation. The best technology means nothing if you can't scale it with the right people." They talked. Not the shallow networking small talk that filled rooms like this. Real conversation. She discussed market trends with the fluency of someone who read the Financial Times every morning. She had opinions on emerging tech that were informed and nuanced. She understood venture capital not as abstract numbers, but as an ecosystem of risk and vision. Marcus found himself leaning in, asking follow-up questions, genuinely captivated. Other guests began to drift over, drawn to the energy. A senator's wife, a tech CEO, a museum director. They formed a small circle around Cynthia and Marcus, and she held her own effortlessly, moving between topics with the grace of someone who had spent years in rooms exactly like this. Across the ballroom, Randall watched. His face had gone from pale to red. Trevor and Blake stood beside him, silent now. Their earlier amusement curdled into something closer to shock. Simone kept glancing between Cynthia and Randall, her phone forgotten in her hand. "You have to go over there," Trevor finally said. Randall's jaw was tight. "I know." "She's talking to Marcus Wellington, I know. Randy, Marcus Wellington could buy and sell you 3 times over." "If he's interested in her," I said. "I know." Randall snapped. He straightened his bow tie, tried to arrange his face into something pleasant, and started across the ballroom. Trevor and Blake followed like cowardly hyenas trailing a wounded lion. Randall's approach scattered the small crowd around, Cynthia like birds sensing a predator. Only Marcus remained, one eyebrow slightly raised as Randall forced his way into the circle. "Cindy," Randall's voice came out too loud, too forced. "You made it. That's nice." Cynthia turned slowly, as if she had all the time in the world. Her voice was cool and perfectly modulated. "It's Cynthia. And yes, I accepted your invitation. Thank you for including me." Randall's smile looked painful. He was trying to regain control, to reassert the dynamic he understood. "Well, you certainly cleaned up." The words hung in the air, their condescension obvious to everyone present. Marcus's expression shifted, his interest in Randall dropping several degrees below freezing. "I'm sorry, you know each other?" Marcus asked. "Mr. Chase is my current employer," Cynthia said calmly. "I'm his secretary." Marcus studied Randall for a long moment, taking in the expensive tuxedo, the proprietary air, the barely concealed discomfort. His voice when he spoke was carefully neutral. "Your secretary?" He turned back to Cynthia. "What did you do before?" "Corporate law, mergers and acquisitions. I worked on the Hastings-Redford merger you probably read about." Marcus's entire demeanor changed. "That was brilliant work. The way you structured the tax implications alone saved both companies millions. Why are you answering phones?" The silence that followed was thick enough to cut. Randall opened his mouth, but no sound came out. The truth hung in the air between them, heavy and damning. Life happens. Circumstances change. Family comes first. And men like Randall never bother to learn their employees' stories because they never see their employees as fully human. Marcus turned his full attention to Cynthia, effectively dismissing Randall from the conversation. "Cynthia, I'm launching a new venture. Renewable tech, global scale. I need a COO who understands both business and people. Would you consider having coffee with me Monday?" Cynthia did not hesitate, did not look at Randall, did not second guess. "I'd be honored. Wait." Randall's voice cracked slightly. "You can't just she works for me." Marcus turned to him slowly. When he spoke, his voice was cold enough to frost glass. "She works. You're just the unfortunate place she does it. There's a difference." Cynthia set down her champagne glass on a passing waiter's tray. She turned to Randall, and for the first time in 3 years, she allowed herself to really look at him, to see him as small as he had always tried to make her feel. "Thank you for the invitation, Randall." It was very illuminating. "I'll see you Monday for my exit interview." She walked away. Marcus followed, already discussing terms and timelines and the future. The crowd parted for her like she was royalty, because in that moment in that room she was. Randall stood frozen, his joke exploding in his face like a bomb he had built himself. Monday morning arrived cold and gray, the kind of New York weather that matched the mood of men who had spent the weekend realizing they had made terrible mistakes. Cynthia arrived at Chase Industries at 8 o'clock sharp, just as she had every morning for 3 years. But this morning was different. Her desk was bare. The succulent was gone. The framed quote about perseverance was gone. The little drawer of emergency tea bags was gone. All that remained was a single cream-colored envelope, sealed and centered perfectly on the empty surface. Randall arrived at 8:15, disheveled in a way Cynthia had never seen. His tie was crooked. His shirt looked slept in. His eyes were bloodshot and ringed with purple shadows.
He had spent the weekend avoiding her calls, hiding in his penthouse,
drinking expensive scotch that did nothing to erase Saturday night. He stopped when he saw her desk, saw her standing beside it in a charcoal suit that made her look like she was already somewhere better. "Cynthia, about Saturday." She picked up the envelope and handed it to him. The motion was smooth, final. "My resignation. Effective immediately. I've forwarded all pending projects to Melissa in legal. Your calendar is updated through the end of the quarter. The passwords are all documented." Randall stared at the envelope like it might bite him. "You can't just leave. We have contracts, NDAs all honored. Your lawyer's already reviewed everything with Mr. Wellington's team over the weekend. I'm clear." Her voice was calm, professional, the same voice she had used for 3 years. But there was something underneath it now, something that sounded like freedom. "This is ridiculous." Randall's voice climbed, desperate and grasping. "I gave you a job when no one else would." That was when something shifted in Cynthia's face. For 3 years she had kept her expression neutral, her voice measured, her anger locked away somewhere deep. Not anymore. Her voice, when it came, was sharp enough to cut. "No, Randall. You gave me a paycheck. There's a difference. You never gave me respect, opportunities, or even the courtesy of my correct name. You gave me a front row seat to your cruelty and called it employment. I made a mistake inviting you, okay? Is that what you want to hear?" Cynthia picked up her bag, the last item that was hers in this place. "Your only mistake was thinking I'd forgotten who I am." She walked toward the elevator. Behind her, she heard him moving, heard the panic rising in his voice. "You'll regret this. No one leaves me." The elevator doors opened. Cynthia stepped inside and turned to face him one last time. Her voice was quiet, almost gentle. "I already regret staying this long." The doors closed on his face. The months that followed moved like a time lapse, like watching a plant grow and another wither in fast motion. Cynthia in a glass conference room at Wellington Ventures, shaking hands with engineers and investors. Cynthia's name appearing on an office door in letters that caught the light. Cynthia Sanders, Chief Operating Officer. Her face on the cover of Forbes, the headline reading, "The New Power Players of Tech," above a photo where she looked directly at the camera with absolute certainty. Her mother beside her at a gala, healthy now, the oxygen tank gone, her smile proud enough to light the room. Cynthia standing at a podium at Columbia, speaking to a lecture hall full of students who hung on every word about resilience and second chances and knowing your worth. While Cynthia rose, Randall fell. A journalist named Sarah Chen published a Twitter thread on a Tuesday afternoon. "Let's talk about Randall Chase's pattern of workplace discrimination." The thread went viral in hours. Former employees came forward. Stories spilled out like water from a broken dam. The headlines multiplied. Chase Industries faces multiple HR complaints. Toxic culture at the top. When privilege meets accountability. Clients began pulling contracts quietly at first, then publicly. Randall sat in his own boardroom while his board of directors tore into him, their faces hard with the realization that his behavior was costing them money. The stock price dropped, then dropped again. Protesters gathered outside Chase Tower with signs about respect and dignity and calling things by their proper names. 6 months later, The grand ballroom at the Javits Center hosted a charity gala for educational equity. Cynthia stood at the podium in a navy gown, poised and powerful, delivering a keynote about access and opportunity, and the students who slipped through, cracks in systems designed to keep them out. The audience hung on every word. When she finished, the standing ovation lasted 2 full minutes. Randall watched from a table in the back. He was there attempting to rehabilitate an image that might be beyond repair. His publicist's idea. He looked older now. The confidence that had once defined him, replaced by something that looked like exhaustion. When Cynthia stepped off the stage, he waited until she was alone in a quiet corner near the windows before approaching. That was a powerful speech. Cynthia turned, and her expression was gracious but distant. The look you might give a stranger. Thank you. I owe you an apology. A real one. Randall's voice was quiet, stripped of the bravado she remembered. What I did, inviting you to humiliate you, it was cruel. You didn't deserve that. You never deserved how I treated you. Cynthia studied him, taking in the changes. The gray at his temples, the lines around his eyes, the slump in his shoulders. Why are you telling me this? Because I lost everything trying to protect my ego. My company's reputation, my friends, my wife, she left, by the way, filed for divorce last month. And I realized something. You were the most competent person I ever employed, and I never once told you that. I'm sorry. The silence stretched between them, filled with the distant sound of the gala continuing without them. Finally, Cynthia spoke. I accept your apology, Randall. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. Something like hope flickered across his face. Do you think, could you ever? No, her voice was firm but not unkind. We won't be friends. We won't work together. This is closure, not reconnection. I understand. But I will tell you this. Cynthia stepped closer, and her voice dropped to something almost intimate. You didn't destroy me by underestimating me. You freed me. Your cruelty pushed me to remember I was never working for you. I was working despite you, so in a twisted way, thank you. She walked away then, back toward the light and noise of the gala. Her colleagues waited for her, faces bright with respect and affection. They surrounded her, swept her back into conversations about the future. Randall watched her go, understanding finally that some bridges once burned illuminate the path forward for only one person, and it was never going to be him. Cynthia's voice, warm and certain, seemed to linger in the air even after she had gone. They say living well is the best revenge. But that's not quite right. Living authentically, that's the best freedom. Revenge is still about them. Freedom is about you. The final image was Cynthia in her corner office at Wellington Ventures, the Manhattan skyline stretching beyond her windows like a promise. Her Columbia Law diploma hung on the wall now, no longer hidden in a drawer. She was on a phone call, laughing at something, her face open and bright and completely free. As the view pulled back through the glass, the letters became visible, etched in gold on the side of the building, Sanders Hall, Wellington Ventures Innovation Center. She had not just reclaimed her life. She had built a new one entirely, and it was hers. Thank you for being part of Whispers of Hope. Your love and support mean more than words. Together we're spreading light, one whisper at a time.